Hi, my name is Debra Meehl of the Meehl Foundation, and I'm here to talk to you tonight to talk to you about the power of changing your story. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is that your story is actually not reality. One of the things that we know is reality takes up time and space. So if I take my gun and I shoot this person over here beside me, the gun takes up time and space, I take up time and space, the bullet takes up time and space, that individual takes up time and space. And so we know that that's happening in reality. And if the police show up 20 minutes later and they come to the door and there's 50 people at the door, there'll be 50 different stories. And their stories are based upon their culture, their race, their socioeconomic status, college education, all types of different things. And so we know that people's stories then are based upon what they've been taught. So if you want to change your story, one of the things that you have to start to become aware of is your own thinking. So what I like to say is that your life is like a goldfish in a fishbowl. And if you were pushed down at the playground, in the kindergarten, little Johnny pooped in your fishbowl. If you didn't get invited out to the date that you wanted to go to, then there was poop in your fishbowl. Your mother yelled at you, there was more poop in your fishbowl. Something happened and you were in an accident and there was poop in a fishbowl. If you go to a really, really good therapist, what happens is that therapist is able to look in the fishbowl and you can pretty much see that there's big chunks in there and they can start throwing that stuff out. The problem is that the water is still really, really murky and you're still swimming in some really unhealthy stuff. So once we know that you can change your thinking, and as you start to change your thinking, what happens is that your perception of things also starts to change. So you have cues that you have learned as a child, and those cues lots of times then become your defeating behaviors. Sometimes they're defeating addictions. Sometimes they're just defeating thinking. And those cues, lots of times, as I said, happen to you when you were a child. And so what happens then is that it's difficult to see beyond that. So as you're growing up as a child, one of the things that we know is that you don't have a fully formed prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex is your insight, your hindsight, and your foresight. So as you learn things as a child, it becomes very black and white. And it's only through, again, being able to reframe some of those thoughts. So if you were told as a child that you were stupid or that you just couldn't get it right, then what happens is that you begin to actually think that. One of the messages that I received as a child is that money didn't grow on trees, and that means that money is difficult to come by. And it's not true. So I've had to rethink a lot of those stories that I was told as a child that were not helpful for me as an adult. So one of the things that we can do in regards to that murky water is we can use affirmations. Affirmations are a way to start changing those perceptions that no longer serve us anymore. So I have affirmations on my computer, and it's as simple as I am complete and whole. I have complete abundance. Money loves me. People love giving me money and gifts. I also have one that says, God is my source and my supply. There is no person, place, or thing that is the source of my supply. Part of what we become attached to is we become attached to the outcome of things. Sometimes we can change the outcome. Sometimes we cannot. So if we can't change the outcome, if we can't make a movement in regards to the outcome of a particular event or a particular thing, then we need to look at moving past being emotional about it. So if I constantly remember that my thoughts plus my emotion equal my behavior, I need to be able to regulate my emotion, and there's several ways to do that. But I also need to regulate my own, what I call my own stinking thinking. So I constantly remind myself that life is not hard, I've heard that whole, life is hard, then you die. Life isn't hard. It doesn't have to be hard. And if I constantly tell myself it's hard, then I'm going to behave like it's hard, and I'm going to project that thinking on the next generation and on my friends and my family, and I certainly don't want to do that. So as I developed as a child, I learned what Albert Ellis calls a slew of irrational beliefs. And those irrational beliefs I like to call fibs. And I can find my irrational beliefs. There's a particular test. It's really simple. It's like 100 questions. It's all true or false. And I want you to know that I took this test about 25 years ago, and it actually changed my life. It was one of those things where I had gone to a conference that had nothing to do in regards to mental health or anything like that. And the person that actually had this test said that this was something that they had used that changed their life. And in fact, I found it extraordinarily helpful, and it changed my life too. One of the irrational beliefs is that your friends and your family must love and accept you all of the time. If you believe that, then what it will happen is that you'll turn yourself wrong side out to get them to love and accept you all of the time. And you won't live your life. You won't be on fire for your life. So one of the things that you have to be able to do is to be able to accept a certain amount of criticism from your friends and your family if they're actually trying to help you. But you don't want to be a doctor just because everybody else is a doctor, and you certainly don't want to live their life, and you want to find your own purpose in life. So one of the things is if you have to please people all the time, then it's very difficult to find your own purpose. Another irrational belief is I must be unfailingly competent in all that I do. And I want you to know that that was an irrational belief that I had for a long time. I grew up in an extraordinarily dysfunctional family. And part of being unfailingly competent in all that I do, I got that information as a child. And part of the way that happened to me was that my grandmother was very, very sick. She had had a major thyroid operation. And if you understand how the thyroid works, it regulates a lot of your emotions. When she returned after having that thyroid operation, she didn't get very good care. So she was emotionally dysregulated all the time. I was about 6 years old at the time, and she had decided that she was going to kill herself with me in the house. And as she had reached for the gun, I began begging her to stop. And she told me that if I was a good girl, that she wouldn't do it. So I want you to know that that kind of situation is the kind of irrational belief that, again, sparks you as an individual to begin looking for meaning in life, meaning for those types of events that, again, left you wounded. And what we know is that lots of times our shame, our loss, our rejection are all things that bring us to a certain amount of wisdom when we get older, and we're able to reframe those traumatic events. So I want you to know that that's the second thing that we look for in being able to take back your power in regards to your particular story. I tell people all the time that bad things happen to good people in this reality that we live in here on this planet, and good things can also happen to bad people. So sometimes we wonder why a bad person wins the lottery versus a good person that wins the lottery. And we have to remember that this particular reality that we live in at this particular time, at least, those things actually do happen. So when we're able to reframe the story, and part of what I did was I learned that she was doing the best that she could. I needed to release my attachment to the outcome of that particular event. And I didn't just do that through forgiveness and that type of work. I actually did that by reframing the story in that I didn't have to be attached to having the power and ripped away from me. So one of the things that I learned in that particular event that I told myself being 6 years old was that I could control the outcome of another person. And I can't control, quite frankly, the outcome of other people. I don't have that kind of power. But I also learned to not trust the universe, and if you want to call it God, not trust God in delivering really good things to me, and that I would have to beg and plead to make good things come to me. And that, again, was another irrational belief. And it happened, again, because I was very small. I had no prefrontal cortex to have insight, hindsight, and foresight in regards to that particular trauma at that moment. So as you take back the power, you change those events that happened to you by, again, affirmations. You change those events by becoming mindful. So as I, now in my life, if I have things that come to me that have to do with my being unfailingly competent in all that I do, I get to that, what we call in DBT, that fork in the road. And as I get to that fork in the road, I began those affirmations. So instead of focusing on I start focusing on what can possibly go well. As we get to that fork in the road and we release our attachments, life gets easier because we're no longer in suffering. We can say that pain is inevitable in this particular reality, in this particular universe, but suffering is when I add my opinion to what's going on. And as I add my opinion, my story about a particular event, and it's usually trauma, gets bigger and more intense and bigger, because as my emotion gets bigger, my story gets bigger. And I'm trying to always match my thinking to my emotions. So we want to make sure that we stay in the facts of a particular event. We accept those facts to the very best of our ability, and we reframe it. And we don't reframe it by pretending that it didn't happen. We also don't go back to the past and try to conjure all of that up. I've had people ask me, well, I don't want to go back to the past and relive all of that. And I said, well, you already lived it once, so most of the time that's not necessary. What does become necessary is trying to find the pieces of wisdom within a particular event that will actually help you move forward. So affirmations can help, as we said, number one, again, being mindful and turning your mind, number two. And number three will be to not be triggered by your own ego. So I like to pretend that my ego is a stool, and on that stool is my ego sits on that stool. There's three legs to that stool: power and control, security and survival, and esteem and affirmation. Anytime my world gets unsettled, and anytime I'm triggered, I guarantee you it falls under one of those three things. So if power and control, if I feel like I'm not able to make choices, security and survival, again, is all about fear. And it's usually fear of, not getting my needs met. And of course, esteem and affirmation is about not being judged, or about understanding that I'm a good person as a human being. One of the things that we know that makes the big difference in any kind of treatment is to understand that the core of you, the absolute core of you, is complete and perfect. Now, you may have behaviors that you don't like. You have behaviors that you might want to change. But if you believe that those behaviors are the core of you, your ego is absolutely not going to let go of those, because it is who you believe yourself to be. If our stories are so ingrained in us that they become our personalities, it becomes more challenging to try to change those types of personalities. We can make changes, though. It's not difficult to make changes. It's not hard to make changes. It becomes inconvenient to make changes. But one of the reasons that I don't believe it's hard is I've seen lots of changes made. I've made certainly significant changes in myself. I've seen amazing changes within my clients. But one of the things about that is that you have to get past believing that making any kind of change to your story is hard or is difficult or it's somehow going to be ripped from you. So I want you to embrace the fact that changing your story, first of all, you have all the power within you to change your story. Mindfulness and awareness is the choice that we get to make every single day. Sometimes we make it moment by moment to be able to change our story. Sometimes just not telling ourselves the same negative thinking over and over again helps us to be able to do that. So tonight is a rebroadcasting of reality versus story. I want you to know we've tried to keep it short and simple and yet give you 3 tools to be able to change your story. And if you start to look at those tools, we will send you free without the 100-question test. That is one of Albert Ellis's from the 1950s. Albert Ellis was all about changing your thinking and looking at your irrational belief. For free, if you email us, we'll send us that test to you. I want you to know that we actually do 30 minutes of counseling to help you recognize your stories, absolutely free. And we're here and available for any of you that would like to give us a phone call, which is listed on our website, or drop us a line, drop us an email. Hang on one second here. Let me see. Thank you for all the thumbs up. Those are the little thumbs up. I appreciate that. We can see those floating across the line. If you send this out to share, if you hit share, then it actually sends it out to your list that you have in Facebook. And your thumbs up obviously gives us all, Facebook likes that. And if you send us a little, send us some love, thank you so much. Kristen Smith says, mindfulness allows us to freeze the frame so that we become aware of our own experiences, reality as it is, without the coloring, distortion of conditioned responses or habitual reactions. She's actually, that's absolutely true. Those habitual reactions, when we want to change those, the only way to do that, again, is to become mindful. And you have to be mindful. If you don't know what your irrational beliefs are, it's difficult to be mindful. Pretty soon you could start, once you understand how your irrational beliefs work, like everything is hard. If you get in the car and you say, I hate my job, I guarantee you when you get to your job, you're not going to like it any better, and everybody around you is going to understand that you don't want to be there either. So again, as you start to change your thinking, it's amazing that your life starts to change. You actually start to feel happier on the inside. Your brain chemistry starts to change because, again, our thoughts plus our beliefs equal our emotion. Torrance says reframing is important. I absolutely agree with that. And again, when you're reframing a particular incident, you're not looking to discredit the incident. There's no way to... discrediting the incident just invalidates you, and that's not what we're about at all. Reframing it means that you're actually looking for pieces of that to use in a toolbox as you become as an adult. Reframing things as children is really, really difficult, but as you become an adult, it's easier to start to reframe things because, again, you're looking for the wisdom. You're looking for how this is propels you to be who you are today in a positive way. I can tell you that all of the incidences that I went through as a child, I wouldn't trade any of them now because it's, again, given me a different tool set to be able to use with different clients that I have in regards to helping them get past their emotional traumas, their childhood traumas, and that kind of thing also. If I don't have any other questions, thank you, Penny, for the yay. I appreciate that. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and let you all. Thank you so much for coming to this live event this evening. I appreciate it very much. I won't be available next Tuesday because I'm actually going to be in Oregon visiting family, but I will be available the following week. Thank you so much for, again, coming and sharing this moment with me. Bye-bye.